So hey guys, for this video I actually have a guest co-star with me today. Her name is
Hi
Courtney.
guys.
So for this video guys, today we're talking about what should every movie have, because every movie needs to have, certain good things about it. It doesn't depend, there's different genres, different subject matters, but every movie should have some things that should be kept, simply because, it's good filmmaking. It'll keep the audience's attention, and it's just kind of an appealing way to make a movie. No matter what genre or subject matter it is, there's always a good way to execute a movie. So Courtney, why don't you go with your first point on what you think every good movie should have?
Okay, thanks, Tom. Actually, I think where you need to start for a good movie is a great storyline.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's really what captures the audience and draws them in for, getting ready for a great movie. I think that's definitely at the heart of making a good movie. So, how about you?
I think it's important too to always work with the genre you're working with. So, like, if you're making a horror film, make sure it's scary. If you're making a romance film, make sure it's romantic and lovely
Sure.
and, cute at times. If it's an action movie, make sure the action scenes are good, but at the same time, don't forget about the storyline. With comedies, make sure there's something funny about it. It's comedy.
Mm-hmm.
And if it's a sci-fi film, do something interesting with the aliens or the time travel elements or the robots or the technology. So small things like that, I think, is what makes a good movie from a bad movie.
Sure, I'd have to agree with you on that.
So what's your second point?
My second point would be I think picking the right actors for the characters you're trying to portray. I think a good actor can really make or break the part. I think most movies are pretty good about picking the right actor for the part, but then you have some movies that you just, when you're watching the movie throughout the whole thing, you can't really see that actor playing the character. You're too focused on that. And but yeah, definitely a vital part of a great movie is picking the right actor for the right character.
And there's definitely some movies where you can definitely tell they're just relying off star power for some of them.
Sure.
I think two good examples. Both of these aren't bad movies, but they're not great ones. I think a good example of good actors for the wrong parts are The Da Vinci Code with Tom Hanks
Okay.
and Jack Reacher with Tom Cruise.
Sure.
And I think because they're just so well known, like, well, if we just cast this well known person, people will like it. And unfortunately, from what I've read about the Jack Reacher stories, he's almost like Dolph Lundgren from Rocky IV.
Okay.
So they thought when the fans of Jack Reacher read or saw the movie, they're like, wait, why is Tom Cruise this character? This guy looks like Dolph Lundgren, and Tom Cruise doesn't look like Dolph Lundgren.
Sure.
And then in Da Vinci Code, some people actually complained that Tom Hanks was almost too old for the part, because I guess John Langdon from the books is a much younger person. And that goes back to, again, that, well, if this is a big actor, we can probably place him in this role.
I think that also comes down to companies wanting to make a lot of money by bringing in big, stars, caring more about what they can bring in for it than really the quality of the movie. So,
and another good example of actually, this was actually pretty risky, and some people actually talked about this online already. The new Wolverine film, they said basically the only two people that American audiences are going to recognize is Hugh Jackman and Famke Janssen.
Sure.
All the other new people, like villains, side characters, they're all from Japan cinema. So this is going to be one of the first X-Men films to have basically only two American actors and actresses we're going to recognize. And it's further proof that sometimes it's kind of neat when studios take that risk of, let's introduce these big-name people from other countries into this movie.
Sure.
Did you want me to do my point next?
Yeah, go right ahead.
And then kind of playing off that, I think it's important for every film to have good characters. Some people complain every character should be likable in the film, but I agree and disagree. I agree in the sense that if the characters are likable and there's something we can connect about them, we kind of understand their motivations throughout the movie. But at the same time, if it's a villainous character, the character has to do something threatening.
Sure.
So in that sense, if they're too friendly, it's kind of like, oh, he's just too nice. I can't take him seriously as a villain. In that case, but at the same time, though, I think it's kind of like, it's almost like, I guess a good villain in this sense is Bane from Dark Knight Rises.
Okay.
What's neat about him was he didn't like that the truth wasn't getting out to people.
Sure.
And so what he did is he did this very big threat. He scared people. He said, this is what happens when you don't let the truth out. I think it's important, for characters to kind of have those motivations. And I'll be as brief as possible about this because this is a newer film. But if you look at Man of Steel, General Zod, the reason why he wanted, he basically told Superman to stop doing what he was doing was because he was worried that Earth was going to turn to Krypton, and because Krypton exploded, he was worried Earth was going to explode. So in that sense, okay, I can understand what he's doing, but how he's doing it is wrong, and that's why he basically was the villain for that movie. So I think it is important to have good characters, but at the same time, if they're villainous, don't be afraid to make them too threatening, because they have to be threatening to the protagonist in order to make the movie interesting.
Sure.
So what's another point that you have for us today?
One thing I think is very important is having something that really draws the audience into the movie or captures like an breathtaking moment part of a movie. I think every movie should have that, just to get such a reaction out of the audiences. Because that's what you go to the movies for, is to have, all these reactions to the movie you're watching, whether it's, just ready to cry from watching a really romantic movie or something that would probably make you scream in the middle of the movie theater because it's just, it really gets to you. I think it can really make or break a movie. So
exactly. And then the next thing is to make sure that the film is tastefully made. But I want to be careful when I say that, because I do know there's some directors like Paul Thomas Anderson and Wes Anderson where they have a very unique way of making movies, and they themselves say in interviews that they want it to be that way. But I think at the same time, you can have your own unique vision of things, but make it interesting.
Sure.
So I guess an example of this is, because I know a lot of people like this director, but he kind of bothers me, is Terry Gilliam. He has the right idea. Monty Python, the Holy Grail, is definitely a good example of, good ideas and a neat approach. But I think with some of his movies, it's either a good approach with a bad story or a good story with a bad approach.
Sure.
And I think that's an example of a director that kind of has a hard time making a good, tastefully made movie. And I think directors like Christopher Nolan and Steven Spielberg kind of know how to do that. They know how to have a good story in place for the movie and also execute it very well. So I think it's important to have that kind of thing when you're a director. So
definitely.
So what's another point you have for us today?
Actually, my last point is I think some movies, this is not for every movie, have a good underlining message. For example, Secret Window. It really made you think. Throughout the whole movie, you're thinking that this character that's really just, taunting Johnny Depp in the movie, is you really think that it's him all along. And then, actually, when you finally get to the end of the movie, I don't know if some of you have seen this. I hope I'm not doing a spoiler or anything. But you really, you find out that it's not what you come to think. And I think movies like that really make you think, and really think about what you're seeing and really throw you for a loop at the end are really makes a great movie. So, yeah.
And then the last point I wanted to make today is I think it's always good to have good filmmaking techniques in your movie. So if you're a cinematographer, make sure everything that we need to see on the screen is there. If you're an editor, make sure the story is edited well, because the scenes are kind of mixed and all over the place and they shoot certain scenes at certain times. It's the editor's job to make sure the story works, that it flows well, that we get the beginning, the middle, and the end in the right places, because we don't want the ending, the middle, and then the beginning. I mean, it has to be in the right place. Because for example, in the first Harry Potter movie, they filmed the last scene first. So they said it was very unusual to film the scene where everybody's supposed to know each other, that they're like, oh, goodbye, and really teary-eyed. So all the actors in that scene were like, it's very bizarre, because it's like, I just met this person, and how am I supposed to get teary-eyed around him? And then I think actually one of the first scenes was filmed last. So at the same time, so people had to pretend that they didn't know each other, but at the same time, the people behind the scenes knew each other really well by then.
Yeah.
So it's kind of interesting how editors have to edit it well enough so we get the impression that, okay, maybe they're just meeting here and this is their goodbye at the end. So I think it's important for editors to do that. And also, people don't really recognize this, and actually someone pointed this out at Academy Awards recently. Music plays a very big part in movies.
Oh, sure.
I mean, you have the Foley artist, every sound effect, like a punch sound and everything, that's recorded by a Foley artist. Every, the background music, the...
Even soundtrack songs, I think, are really important, for whatever movie you're watching. I think music does play a key role in any movie.
Or like in the new 007 film, Skyfall, Adele is very big now because of that Skyfall theme.
Sure.
And even though there's plenty of other things about the movie that's great, I think when people think of that movie, that they kind of have that Adele theme song playing in their head, and it definitely makes a lot of sense why that won Best Original Song, because
Mm-hmm.
it's people think that song when they think that movie, and so that's when you know you have a song.
Sure.
So that was our point, you guys. Thank you, Courtney, for joining me today.
Thank you, guys.
And we hope to see you guys for a future video.
Sounds good.